Okay, in my haste to get to MJ Sewell, I skipped over two questions from Michael R., bad cartoonist. Who owns the original pages that you did for Marvel Fanfare? And those are in the Cerebus archive. Will we ever see them reprinted? And it's like, why not? Why not is basically because they're in one of the stay flats in the second floor closet, which is where a lot of the odd pieces of artwork, false start pages, lettering, um, the original art to the Jam story that I did with Chester Brown, things like that, where if I stored them with the rest of the Cerebus artwork, they'd probably just get lost. So I do keep those on site. And it's interesting that I overlooked your questions, Michael, which is going to start to look predestined as we go along here. I I think you'll probably agree with that. Um, so we got a couple of photos of me holding up the pages, showing them to Rolly, and Rolly has taken them over, has scanned them, and then taken the scans over to Studio Comics Press. And I said, just do a quick and dirty one copy of each. Um, there's five plates, and because Michael R. asked about this, and because Michael R. has provoked all of this discussion that we're going to be having about Jim Shooter, it's like, well, if anybody deserves the first set of prints, it's Michael R. of Easton, Pennsylvania. So those will be going in with your portfolio and the bonus prints that you've already purchased. So we're really pushing the boundaries of what a stay flat can hold. Anyway, I decided to when I saw that I had overlooked this, I thought, well, okay, probably part of it is you're really giving short shrift to Jim Shooter, who just passed away, and was nice enough to autograph the 54 and 56 that you took to the convention for him to sign. And that you asked him about the Wolveroach covers, and he did answer. And it's okay. We've already spent a half an hour on that, but that still ended up giving short shrift because after I got the Strange Death of Alex Raymond page done, page 668, which I'm very happy with, and it took way too long. It took about 4 or 5 days again. So I was sort of trying to answer the please hold for Dave Sim questions and think about them at the same time, and also get the Strange Death of Alex Raymond page done. And then I got the Ninja High School page done, and now I'm at the end of that, and it's now Wednesday, August 6th, about 10 to 4 in the afternoon. So I've got about 5 hours until the sunset prayer. And so, okay, let's actually pay attention to Please Hold for Dave Sim for September, I'm supposing. And okay, looking at the plates from the Marvel Fanfare portfolio, it was I thought I really should tell a story about Jim Shooter that was a period story, and I'm not sure who it was that I was talking to. It was somebody from Marvel, and it was somebody that I would be comfortable enough just talking about general interest topics for whatever reason. So I'm suspecting it was either Chris Claremont or Bill Sienkiewicz. And all of us being in the category where we're making a pretty good buck these days, and you can't buy everything that you could possibly want under the sun, but you can spoil yourself with things. And one of the things that you can spoil yourself with is hardcovers. You can buy a hardcover book instead of having to wait for the softcover to come out. And in this case, it was the new Stephen King book. And I was talking to whoever it was, and I was saying, "Have you read the new Stephen King?" And yeah, I did. I picked it up and just barreled right through it, even though it was like 800 pages or whatever it was. And I'm sitting, my Stephen King days are behind me. Nothing against Stephen King. And I'm going, what was the book? And it's like, I'm going, okay. I don't remember. Let's say it was it. It was one of the thick ones, and one of the really shooting for the literary firmament on his part, and doing a pretty fair job of it, as far as I could tell. And I'm going like, yeah, I think it was it. So that's what I'll say in referring to this. And the story is that whoever I was talking to said, yeah, I just read it, and who I thought I pictured the. And then it's like I couldn't remember the name. It was a name for the character that wasn't like a name. It was like a title. And he said, "You know who I pictured in that?" And it's like, as soon as he said, "You know who I pictured in that?" I thought, I know exactly what he's going to say, and I had the same reaction. And it was Jim Shooter. And so I was going, well, okay, let's see if we can just cut it off at that. We've already given Michael R. A half an hour for his questions. Okay, I'm going to stop there. There's somebody at the door. Hang on. So, okay. I knew exactly what he was going to say when he said who he pictured Trash Can Man as being the walking man was Jim Shooter. And it's like I'm going, okay, let's compact that, and it'll be a bonus answer for Michael R. And then we'll just sort of leave it at that. And then you're going to think that I'm making this up it's caffeine day today, a Wednesday. So I was walking my regular route right down the street that the Off-White House is on. And there was a coverless paperback book sitting on a planter. And I'm always curious about that. It's like, well, this is completely out of the normal. You don't usually see a paperback book just sitting out on a planter in downtown Kitchener. I wonder what the book is. So I walked over and looked at the book, and it was The Stand, the complete, unedited version of The Stand by Stephen King. And I'm going, The Stand, that was the book. And it's like, now come on, what are the odds that Dave Sim is sitting there going, well, I think it was it. I think it was one of the thick books, so I think it was it. And it's like, okay, well, this seems to be a signal to me that I shouldn't be trying to just leave Sleeping Dogs Lie, and to actually talk a little bit more about Jim Shooter, because just thumbing through the book, and I'm going, Holy smokes! It's like I didn't remember much of the stand, but I did remember that the guy ends up in Las Vegas. I don't know why I remembered that, and it's very very strange because it's like what they were portraying COVID-19 as being, getting everybody paranoid and terrified about what this is going to be, and that this was the real deal in the stand. Uh, so it's interesting because here's two people who were acquainted with Jim Shooter and this this absolutely terrifying character, and it's yeah. I, however many pages I had to read about the Walking Man, didn't take long for me to go, I'm picturing Jim Shooter here. And unconsciously, until this other individual mentioned it, Chris Claremont or Bill Sienkiewicz. Um, okay, yeah, I can definitely see that. Um, so it is interesting because Jim Shooter was a terrifying sort of presence, but he was also like one of the nicest people that you could possibly meet and one of the most helpful people you could possibly meet. But it really depended on the fact of you not crossing one of his red lines. And you never knew where there was a Jim Shooter red line until you crossed it. Um, I'm thinking of, and I know very little about Dark Phoenix, but I do know that that was one of those situations where Chris Claremont could do no wrong until the Dark Phoenix storyline or whatever led into the Dark Phoenix storyline. And that was a Jim Shooter red line where it's like, no, she's responsible for the death of, a planet full of people or whatever it was. So she has to die or she has to have justice served. And, Chris Claremont and John Byrne had been left to their own devices pretty much up to that point. And then it was, no, we're not, you can't finesse this and you can't, we'll try harder next time. Something has to be done about this. Another example, and, I will cite Gene Day, that I remember Gene being, quite jazzed about the fact that one Christmas, after he had been working at Marvel for a little while, he had occasion to call Jim Shooter. No, that wasn't it. Jim Shooter called him, and it was, okay, well, this is not something that I expect. This is the head honcho. This is the big guy, and he's phoning to talk. And they talked, probably for like an hour or an hour and a half, and about everything under the sun. And obviously, Gene was quite jazzed about this, and told me about this. And this is a really good thing. I think I'm getting in firmer and more solidly with Marvel Comics because Jim Shooter phoned me. Okay, I'm gonna try and do these in smaller sections. That was 6 minutes. And I already knew from people in the business, people at Marvel, people who had worked at Marvel, that everybody had different experiences with Jim Shooter. And like I say, it was usually about you crossed a red line, and now it's my way or the highway. Which if you're the editor in chief of Marvel Comics, you do have that prerogative, which Jim Shooter understood that he did. I don't think Gene quite understood what the situation was. That, yeah, that's great. I'm glad that you had a nice long talk with Jim Shooter, and you guys are on the same wavelength, and you have all this stuff, shared enthusiasms and whatnot. But just be prepared that if you cross one of his red lines, that's going to be it. You'll have two choices: capitulate or leave. And that did happen with Master of Kung Fu. That Gene took over penciling and inking Master of Kung Fu, and took a big hit to his income because he was a much slower penciler than he was an inker. But this is what Marvel wanted him to do. Mike Zeck was all done, and are you interested? And it's like, well, yes, I am. But the friction came in because, as for most of us, when it came to Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, it's like that's the title that Paul Gulacy did. And Paul Gulacy was the world-class, top of the line Jim Steranko clone. He was doing Steranko, but he was really, really good at it. So that was, really what all of us knew Master of Kung Fu from. And that was no different for Gene Day. It was like, okay, well, if I'm taking over Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, then I'm going to be looking at Steranko, and I'm going to be looking at Gulacy and going, okay, I'm not going to do these guys, but I'm going to, look at what they're doing and go, okay, what's my version of that? And that was just not Jim Shooter's way of doing comics. Jim Shooter's way of doing comics was 6 panels of the page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3 tiers of 2 panels each. And if you're going to do something besides that, you're probably just confusing the reader. Please don't do that. And I remember at one point that Gene was telling me that Jim Shooter had phoned him and said he had showed Gene's latest job to Archie Goodwin, and Archie Goodwin had agreed with Jim that it was unreadable, that there was just too many continuous backgrounds and storytelling tricks and stuff, and it's not Lunch Bucket Comics. We're doing Lunch Bucket Comics here. And it's like, that didn't sound right to me, and I made the possible mistake. I don't know if it was a mistake, but I phoned Archie Goodwin and said, I talked to Gene Day, and this is what Gene Day had to say, that Jim Shooter had to say. And did you tell Jim Shooter that Gene's work was unreadable? And he went, no, I said that I can see where it might be a little more difficult than your typical comic book page, but I could still read it okay. It just, you maybe had a couple of false starts or whatever. And I don't know, that's the situation where you don't know to this day, okay, what did Archie Goodwin actually say to Jim Shooter? Because Jim Shooter's the boss. And if you're having a red line conversation with Jim Shooter about somebody else crossing your red line, you're going to have an inclination to probably be as diplomatic as possible and probably try not to absolutely disagree with Jim Shooter while trying not to absolutely agree with Jim Shooter if you don't agree with Jim Shooter. It's like, I'll cross my own red lines, thank you. I don't want to do this on someone else's behalf. And of course, when I phoned Gene Day and told him I talked to Archie Goodwin and this is what Archie had to say, then that was a great relief to Gene. That, okay, this isn't that I'm just drawing bad comics and someone whose opinion I respect, like Jim Shooter's, and someone whose opinion I respect, like Archie Goodwin, both agree that I'm just doing this wrong. Um, so, like in the years since, I was doing what I was doing on Cerebus because I was paying the printing bill. So, that never came up with me. It's like, can I do this? I can do whatever I want. I'm paying the printing bill. Um, but in retrospect, I think that we probably all made mistakes in trying to be too innovative, because usually innovative was, it made a comic a fan favorites comic book, but it didn't sell as well. And it's like, I always admired Roy Thomas's balls in saying, um, Conan sold a lot better when John Buscema took over than it ever did under Barry Windsor Smith. And it's like, well, them's fighting words, but no, that's usually how all those things work. Spider-Man sold better drawn by John Romita than it did by Steve Ditko. It's like, well, okay, them's fighting words, but this is a business. What we're doing is selling widgets, and it just happens to be that the widgets that we're selling are words and pictures together. But we've got standards that we have here, and the standards center on, is this selling? The fact that the X-Men was such an explosive seller, from going from a marginal book to an explosive seller, that's where you got the latitude to experiment and do really weird things in the comic book. As long as sales keep going up, we're fine with that. Same thing with Frank Miller taking a marginal book like Daredevil at the time that he took it over. And okay, well, sales are mushrooming over here. So Frank Miller, you just do that Frank Miller thing, and we're right here for you. Master of Kung Fu was more successful, I think, under Gene Day than it had been under Mike Zeck, but it still wasn't setting any land office records. It mostly because it wasn't a superhero book. I mean, when you're talking about Chris Claremont's X-Men and John Byrne's X-Men and Frank Miller's Daredevil, those are costume heroes titles. You can say, well, Shang-Chi has a costume. It's like, yeah, but it's a kung fu book. It's not a superhero book in formal terms. But I think one of the problems was that everybody decided that they wanted to be Frank Miller, or everybody decided that they wanted to be John Byrne and do all of this innovative stuff and storytelling that fans like. And we started losing the casual reader, because a lot of Jim Shooter's truisms were truisms then and truisms now. Any comic book is always somebody's first comic book, and consequently, you have to meet them halfway. The more you can establish the premise of the book and give them the background on what's going on, I made fun of that in Church and State, with Dirty Flegel and Dirty Drew and the Secret Wars Roach, because they did that inelegantly. They just started spouting whatever their backstory was, and that was one of Jim Shooter's red lines. Was if I pick up this comic book that you just did and I read it, and this is my first comic book featuring these characters, I got to be able to tell who these characters are and what their background is. Some writers were better at doing it than others. And some writers just went, well, okay, this is what I'm getting paid for. Drink the Kool-Aid. Just spout until you've explained all of the background on whoever the character is. And me, doing all of these, innovative layouts and drawing tricks and storytelling tricks that you just couldn't get away with at DC or Marvel. And then making fun of what Marvel was doing. It's like, well, you talk about biting the hand that feeds you. You're getting paid out of the money that Secret Wars is bringing in to Marvel Comics, and that Jim Shooter has come up with to try and, if not increase sales, at least keep them from dropping any further. What you're doing, Dave, is driving away the casual readers. So as I was doing this, and I'm thinking, okay, well, in for a penny, in for a pound, Michael R. Let's go back and look at the issues around the Wolver Roach parody covers and see what was going on there. And I got to tell you, I've been through the issues immediately around it, and I'm not seeing any warning letter from Marvel. I'm not saying that it isn't in there, but unless somebody can find that for me, I'm assuming that didn't actually happen, that got retconned onto the story. Okay, I'm going to pick up from there with something that I read in issue 59. Okay, I do have something that I've got to say about that. It's from Terry Austin. 59, I will say, has got a photo from MapleCon 5, which was the last stop on my solo Canadian tour in 1983. And the caption is, "The end of the con party at MapleCon 5, last stop on my Canadian tour. Chris Claremont and I challenge each other to a Cerebus X-Men crossover. That's Denny peering dubiously from beneath my cap and drinking heavily." That was one of those, you're really pushing the limits here, Sim, and you know that you're pushing the limits here, but it's like, no, I think I'm on safe ground. Chris Claremont can do pretty much whatever he wants because he's Chris Claremont, and the X-Men are selling what the X-Men are selling in 1983. So at the party, we were sitting and talking, and I said, "What about a Cerebus X-Men crossover?" Just really being, sort of like provocative. And Chris said, "Are you serious?" And it's like I went, "Yeah, I'm serious. Are you serious? I mean, you can't be serious. Don't you have to talk to somebody about this?" And it's like Chris was pretty confident that he could do whatever he wanted within limits, and as long as it wasn't going to cost Marvel money, it wouldn't actually have to make Marvel a giant pile of money for Marvel to do it because Chris Claremont wants to do it. So, I mean, you don't want to be talking about something like that until the contracts are signed, even if you see if you can even get to the contract stage. But it's like, well, even if we don't get to the contract stage, I'm not saying that anything that's untrue. I said to Chris Claremont, "What about a Cerebus X-Men Cerebus crossover?" And Chris went, "Are you serious?" And I went, I'm serious if you're serious. So, what's what's the worst that is going to happen? I can't picture Marvel Comics suing me for saying that Chris Claremont and I challenged each other to an X-Men Cerebus crossover at MapleCon. A lot of people were there listening while we were talking about this. And this is actually issue 56. This is the last of the three Wolverine covers. In an answer to Scott Lingle's letter, the Cerebus X-Men book is a long way from lifting off. Right now, we have a clear intention on the part of the individuals who are in on it from the beginning. Jim Shooter, Chris Claremont, and myself to go ahead with it at some time, in some form. Since I have all the initial ideas Chris and I have tossed around in hand, I'm going to have to prepare some kind of formal proposal to tie it all together. I've just finished forming up with a 5-page portfolio of pinups of Marvel characters for Al Milgram's Marvel Fanfare. So that had already happened, or was virtually happening simultaneously with that. Next, I'm doing the Cerebus short stories about Cerebus's childhood days for Archie Goodwin's Epic magazine. That was already happening. I hope by spring I'll be ready to throw myself into a project of the size a Cerebus X-Men crossover deserves. I'll keep you all posted on how things develop. I've been promising Dick Giordano a Batman cover for a year now, so don't hold your breath. Again, it's like, okay, how is this going to work? I mean, a team crossover, and I was only vaguely familiar with the new X-Men. I only knew that it sold giant piles of copies to pretty much everybody. So it's like, well, okay, we're, this is going to take some doing. And it's like, well, if it's going to take some doing, don't talk about it yet. Wait until, it's actually happening. And, but that, why fritter away this great thing that Chris Claremont is up for it? And if Chris Claremont's up for it, Jim Shooter's up for it. By not talking about it. If you don't talk about it, it's not going to happen. And it's like, Dave, that's not the way things are done. And it's like, well, it's the way I do things. It's like, okay, all right. You're going to be lucky to get out of this by the skin of your teeth. So Chris Claremont and I got on a plane going to British Columbia, which is, as far west as you can get in Canada, and flying up to Prince George, which is another fairly long flight, with Chris connecting in Toronto and me meeting him there. And it's like, well, it's a 3 or 4 hour flight. We'll have plenty of time to talk about the Cerebus X-Men crossover. Margaret should be able to find those pages in such as they are in the notebooks, because I was basically sitting and taking dictation and really had no idea what Chris was talking about. It's like, no, you don't just get on a plane with Chris Claremont and start writing a crossover with the X-Men. The X-Men is the X-Men. Chris Claremont is Chris Claremont, orders of magnitude above where you are. So the most sensible first step would have been, okay, get all of Chris Claremont's X-Men comics to that point. Read them all, and then go, okay, I am now at least familiar with the characters, and at least familiar with the story arcs. And now Chris and I we'll be able to talk intelligently about this, and I'll know when he says, okay, this character comes in and has a confrontation with this character, then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can, I know who he's talking about from such and such an issue. I don't know what issue it is, but I did read that part. Um, so essentially, it was okay when I got back to Kitchener, and it's like, okay, let's look at these notes. It's like I have no idea even what I've written here or what it is that we were talking about, and it's going to go over like a lead balloon if I phone Chris and go, all that stuff that we talked about on the plane, can we review that? It's like, no, Chris was improvising, and it was my job to stick with him. It would have made more sense instead of having my notebook there if I could have had a tape recorder and like, okay, let's talk about it, and then when I get back to Kitchener, I'll hit play, and then here's Chris Claremont's side of the X-Men Cerebus crossover. And it was that was obviously the point where it just wasn't going to happen. It's like I was right in what I was saying here in issue 59 that it's going to be a huge project. Anything that's got any graphic novel with the X-Men in it, if you even got 3 pages per X-Men, you're already talking about a 50, 60 page book, and that on top of my monthly schedule on Cerebus, that doesn't seem too likely. Comic art metaphysics being what it was, I had no idea that the Turtles were right around the corner. And I think with Kevin going, well, if he's going to do a crossover with the X-Men, what about a crossover with the Turtles? But in that case, Kevin was going to do all the work, and I just had to fill in Cerebus. A lot of this has come to mind because I'm working on the Ninja High School Cerebus crossover, and I'm definitely I'm using a lot more Jim Shooter truisms than any other truisms of anybody else while I'm putting this together. It's like, for Cerebus fans, this is going to be their first Ninja High School comic book. For Ninja High School fans, this is going to be their first Cerebus comic book. So be adroit, finesse things, but definitely try to repeat the information so that they know where they are in the story. Oh, okay, this is a very weird story, but I know where I am because Dave keeps telling me where I am. So 2020 hindsight, all of the riffs that I do on Cerebus when I'm doing a solo Cerebus thing, those riffs are not going to serve me in good stead on the Ninja High School Cerebus crossover. I need to channel my inner Jim Shooter. I think it's one of the reasons. I don't know how many of the stories are coming out now, but it's really, Jim Shooter was a very accommodating guy, but he did have his rules that this is what you need to do in order to sell comic books, and if your comic books aren't selling as good as Chris Claremont's or Frank Miller's, here's some of the things that you're going to have to think about, because I'm going to be watching for you. And if you crossed one of his red lines, your life could get very, very unpleasant until you capitulated to whatever it is that the Jim Shooter wanted you to do. And the fact that I included Jim Shooter's name in the answer to this letter, in on it from the beginning, that suggests to me that I at least waited until Chris Claremont got back to New York, from Ottawa and, left it for a little while and then called him and said, so have you talked to Shooter about a X-Men Cerebus crossover? And got a reasonably definitive answer back of, yes, I did, and it sounds like he's okay with it, depending on what it is that we come up with. And it's like that. That was very accommodating on Jim Shooter's part. So reading between the lines of this, it's like, well, okay, I'm doing Wolveroach because that's kind of funny, and it certainly links with this future X-Men Cerebus crossover up ahead. And when the thing happened with Denny of sending her sister a check that was for a fair amount of money, and going until we work out this joint bank account thing, I think I'm going to have to find some sources of income just for me. That I was comfortable enough to phone Jim Shooter, like directly, and say, here's the situation that I'm in. Can you get me some work, like covers or something like that? And I think it was one of those, Jim Shooter at any given point had a bunch of stuff on his desk where he's going, okay, I want to do something about this. I want to do something about this. I want to do something about this. Different priorities. And I think one of the things on his desk was Marvel Fanfare. Al Milgram's, as I say specifically here, Marvel Fanfare, and Jim Shooter going, okay, we're not getting the numbers that I want here. It's a really good book. It's an interesting book that he's putting together, but this might need some help. So, yeah, why don't you do a portfolio for Marvel Fanfare? And I go, okay, fine. It's like, I didn't even really know what Marvel Fanfare was, but okay, like pinups of Marvel characters. He goes, yeah. And I said, any preferences? And he went, well, let's see. And I think he was the one who came up with, well, Howard the Duck would be a good one. Yeah. Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. Yeah, that got into kind of dicey areas, but yeah, I can picture doing that a year after Gene died. Um, Iron Man. I love the Iron Man as drunk uh, storyline when I was getting the freebies from Marvel Comics. So yeah, I'll do a drunk Tony Stark in the Iron Man, and these were all things that Jim Shooter picked, and I went, well, okay, that's like Moon Knight was another one, and it's like, yeah, I'd love to do a Moon Knight, which I think prompted me to go, oh, I have to do a Moon Knight parody so that I can keep doing Bill Sienkiewicz, doing Neil Adams, doing Batman. So there you go. That's the story as I recall it on Marvel Fanfare, and how that related to the X-Men Cerebus crossover that never happened. So there you go, Michael. Here's some photos of Michael that he sent along with his latest letter.